wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, I'm no kwa, Osinachi. One lemon, Osinachi, I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, mama, Osinachi.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, I'm no kwa, Osinachi. One lemon, Osinachi, I'm watching. Hey, Osinachi, mama, Osinachi.
sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Namnukwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Namnukwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no qua, Osinachi. One money, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
A ní wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré o, wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa, àwọn ọmọdé wọ̀nyí kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa. Wọ́n kéré sí nọ́mbà wa.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. I'm no qua. One money, Osinachi. I'm watching. Daily, Osinachi. Mama, Osinachi.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Diolu.
Good afternoon. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, should we get started right away? Yeah.
I think we should wait for about 5 minutes for probably for others to join us. Maybe.
Okay. We'll do 3 minutes so
Oh,
that they don't take. We'll wait for some 3 minutes and see
right.
if they're coming up. Yeah. Hey, everywhere. I will stop. Wow. Okay, so I think we'll have to get started. If others are not able to,
Okay,
they are
so
not able to make their way here. So I want to welcome you to LSA formally, LSA 2022, and I do hope that you've been having a great time. So your paper is on activism abroad, Nigerians in diaspora, and the Chibok girls crisis. Yeah. Okay. So
yes.
yeah. Okay. So let us start and see if we can do this in 15 minutes, and then see how it goes from there. So the initial plan has been for each presenter to have 15 minutes of presentation time each, then followed by 30 minutes of questions and then answers, because we are expected to have 4 presentations. So we will work with 15 minutes going forward on the assumption that others may still join us as we make progress.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to share my screen now.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Temitope, and the title of my paper is Beyond the Home Soil, Diaspora Nigerians and the Chibok Girls Crisis. This paper is about the Bring Back Our Girls movement, and it's going to be examining the origin of the movement within the context of. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you, but it's like there is another voice coming in the background. I don't know if that is from from your place, or from the control room.
I don't know.
Is there a present?
Am I audible enough?
Yes, you're audible, but there is another voice in the background that is filtering in. You are audible. I can hear you.
I don't know about that because I'm not aware anything like that is. I don't know.
Hello. It seems the background noise is from one of you two because we are muted. So maybe the chair might stay on mute until the presenter is done.
Yes. Even while I'm muted, I can still hear the noise. It's not from here.
So it's definitely from the presenter.
Hello. Okay. So this paper is about the Bring Back Our Girls movement, and it's going to be examining the origins of the movement within the context of terrorism in Nigeria. Sorry. On the 9th of April 14 to April 15, 2014, about 276 mostly Christian female students between the ages of 12 to 18 were kidnapped by the Islamic terrorist group Boko Haram from the government girls secondary school in Chibok, Borno State, Nigeria. 57 of the schoolgirls escaped immediately following the incident by jumping from trucks on which they were being transported, and others have been rescued by the Nigeria Armed Forces on various occasions. The girls kidnapped in Chibok in 2014 are only a small percentage of the total number of people that have been abducted by this terrorist organization. And according to Amnesty International in 2015, at least 2,000 women and girls have been abducted by this terrorist group, many of whom have been forced into sexual slavery. Argument and observation. This paper argues about the kidnapping of the girls, inserting gender into the politics of terrorism in new ways. It also gives an unprecedented international attention to Boko Haram terrorist activities in Nigeria. Also, the kidnapping became an important component of development in Nigeria because the Chibok girls abduction, which spurred the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, thrust the fight against Boko Haram into the global spotlight and brought in billions of dollars in military assistance from Western donors to address the conflict in Chad Basin. The Nigerian government entered into negotiation with Boko Haram insurgents for the release of more than 100 of the girls in exchange for dollars and the release of several detained Boko Haram insurgent leaders. A short history of Boko Haram in Nigeria. Boko Haram is a terrorist organization based in northeastern Nigeria. It is also active in some African countries like Cameroon, Niger Republic, and Chad Republic. Boko Haram, which translates to Western education is forbidden, is said to be opposed to Western education and civilization. to promote the supremacy of Islamic civilization. It was founded by Muhammad Yusuf, a Muslim cleric, in 2002. Within weeks, the applied had become an hashtag, growing from a Twitter movement initiated by Nigerian activists to thousands of Facebook posts, actors, rappers, and the first lady of the United States. Boko Haram atrocities. The group has killed thousands of people and has displaced more than 2.5 inhabitants of Nigeria. Some of the atrocities also include insecurity, which has led to the decline of economic activities within the region. That's the northeastern part of Nigeria. Some of the atrocities also includes the proliferation of arms that have intensified armed robbery, among other forms of violent crimes in Nigeria. Insecurity has driven away foreign investment from the region. Also, in terms of international reputation, Nigeria consistently ranks amongst dangerous countries to live in the world. The Boko Haram group was established by Yusuf in Maiduguri, the capital of the northeastern state of Borno. Although the original name of the group is Jamaatul Sunnah, which often translates to Association of People of the Sunnah for Preaching and Jihad. This in turn was popularly interpreted as Western education is a sin, or Western education is forbidden. Ideologically, the Boko Haram is against Westernization, which they viewed as negatively impacting Islamic value. The group blames Western influences on Nigerians' culture of corruption, which has contributed to a wide gap between the rich and the poor in Nigeria. Abduction of Chibok girls. During the night of April 14 and 15, 2014, about 276 girls, mostly teenagers, were kidnapped from their school in the Chibok community in northeastern Nigeria while they were preparing to take their final exam. The adoption was the first in Nigerian history that school children would be kidnapped without a trace. Although there have been a series of adoptions, but this time around, it was the first in the history of Nigeria that there was no traces to rescue the girls. Boko Haram had killed over 6,000 people in between 2014 and 2018. They had also carried out massacres, including the killing of 59 schoolboys in February alone. According to Amnesty International, they revealed that Boko Haram fighters target women, especially girls, and rape them, and other sexual violence amounting to war crimes during recent raids in northeastern Nigeria. In February and March 2021, Amnesty International interviewed about 22 people in a cluster of villages in Borno State, and they repeatedly gave the same response about Boko Haram repeatedly attacking them since 2015. During violent raids, Boko Haram fighters killed people trying to flee and looted them. They loot money, they loot livestock and other valuables. The targeted communities most times have abandoned their forces that are supposed to protect them, and others are still struggling to gain any recognition or response to this horror. Survivors and witnesses described these attacks involving sexual violence in at least 5 villages in the Maiduguri local government. During this raid, usually at night, Boko Haram fighters would rape women and would also who are caught, and some who are also trying to flee. To bring back our girls movement. The Bring Back Our Girls movement gained reputation. It actually started, according to research, by a lawyer based in Abuja with an hashtag Bring Back Our Girls in April 2014. And the hashtag received a major international popularity by May, which metamorphosed into physical protests around the world. 100 days after the girls were kidnapped, protests took place in Nigeria, Pakistan, and other parts of the world. In a world where movements appear and fizzle out, just as they are getting started, Nigeria's Bring Back Our Girls movement is an exception, which means that an event that was supposed to be a one-day event in 2014 has now entered into the 8th year now, and it's also waxing stronger. This was done so partially by a lot of the movement rejected funds from foreign aid organizations. The Bring Back Our Girls movement started in 2014, following the abduction of over 200 schoolgirls from Chibok Secondary School by the Boko Haram Islamic insurgent group. They organized a public protest on the 30th of April in Nigeria's capital, and that was in Abuja, which was meant to be a one-off event, but then it eventually metamorphosed into a movement. The movement, although the aim of the movement was to pressure the government to confront Boko Haram and bring the abducted girls back home safely, but it kept redefining and extending what eventually became the movement as of today. Local and international critiques of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. Initially, many people denied the abduction of the girl. They felt it was an attempt to embarrass the incumbent governor around that period when it happened. So they thought that, okay, the government was not doing well, and so they were not expected to vote for him for a second term during that period. So the movement became popular across the world. Some media celebrities and politicians also criticized the government of Nigeria as of that period. Between 2010 and 2015, some social movements were formed, like unlike the social movement of now. These social movements were not restricted to the countries where they started. They happened through social media and new communication technologies. They rapidly spread across borders, attracting millions of sympathizers far away from countries. For example, we can talk about the Arab Spring, and we started in Tunisia around 2010 and also spread to so many countries in North Africa and the Middle East. And the Occupy Wall Street also in 2011 and a host of others. The politicization of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. During the 2015 election, like I said earlier.
you have 3 minutes more.
Okay, let me quickly rush over this. The politicization of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. During the 2015 elections, the incumbent president, Jonathan, in 2015, was criticized for exploiting the Bring Back Our Girls with the hashtag Bring Back Goodluck Jonathan 2015. Similarly, politicians, including the President Muhammad Buhari, also exploited the crisis when he consistently promised that he would defeat Boko Haram. Ironically, some have argued that the global visibility given to the Chibok girls kidnap inhibited the release of the girls. Some felt that the girls would have been released if there wasn't pressure from state and non-state actors. So this is a picture of the former First Lady of the United States campaigning for the Bring Back Our Girls in Nigeria. Diaspora Nigerians and the Bring Back Our Girls. The Nigerians in diaspora organized public protests in order for this movement to gain visibility across borders. They also contributed money towards the movement. Then they pressured the government back home of residents and also residents to support the government's efforts to free the girls. What are the challenges confronting this movement? Some Nigerians feel that the diaspora counterparts do not have business advocating from freeing the girls since they are not living within the country. Then also the failure of the government of Nigeria to take necessary action to rescue the girls is also one of the challenges confronting this movement. Then the refusal of the government to cooperate with international community to rescue the girls. Thank you.
Thank you for that opening presentation on the Chibok girls and the crisis of we will take questions and comments when we've had all the presentations. Thank you for that presentation. So now we will go to the next presentation, which is titled Constraints to Independent Struggle in Sub-Saharan Africa, the case of Biafra and Ambazonia by Primus Fonken from the University of Brer. So Primus, please unmute and then give us your presentation in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you, Chair. Am I being listening, Chair? Are you getting me?
Yes, you are very audible. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I apologize by just joining the group because the time that I got was, I was thinking of 2 p.m., but I just clicked on a rise that it was changed to 1 p.m. So I'm sorry for that. Also, my presentation, actually, I've not done it in PowerPoint because of certain constraint and a lot of work this way. So, Chair, I'm sorry for not doing my PowerPoint presentation, but I'll do it orally. So my topic is Constraints to Independent Struggle in Sub-Saharan Africa, with case studies from Biafra and Ambazonia. I think the article analyzes the difficulties faced by secessionist movements in Sub-Saharan Africa, and with case study Biafra and Ambazonia. So we are saying here that Sub-Saharan Africa has witnessed several secessionist movements. From independence to date, we can count up to about 13 or 14 secessionist movements. But among all those secessionist movements, very few of them have succeeded. I think if we're counting, we'll look at the Eritrea, which succeeded in the 1990s successfully, and also we look at South Sudan, which did it in 2011. So all the other secessionist movements have failed. So the question is, why these failures? What actually are some of the problems? So we believe that secessionist movement in Africa actually has come as a result of poor governance in some of the countries, marginalizations in some areas, and in some areas, the issue of abundant natural resources, such as oil, has influenced several attempts of secessionist movements. Major secessionist movements in Africa have occurred in areas like the DRC Congo, Ethiopia, Sudan, Nigeria, Cameroon. As we said earlier, all these secessionist movements, most of them failed. Only 2 succeeded, that is Eritrea and South Sudan. All our attempts from these countries have not been very, very successful. So the purpose of this article is to critically assess the origins of the separatist sentiments in Biafra and Ambazonia, because we said our case studies will be Biafra and Ambazonia, which is Biafra in Nigeria and Ambazonia movement in Cameroon. We have to look at how and when these such sentiments evolve into actual movement, and we look at the factors which determine the successes and the failures of this movement. Without much ado, we are saying that actually Biafra failed, but Ambazonia is still on course. So look at the various activities, how it all went through. So before we proceed, we'll look at the issue of a methodology. Methodology, this article has actually used a strictly historical method of analysis and chronological method, which means articles have been read and they have been analyzed. They will also use the chronological method. We also use a lot of primary and secondary sources, that is archival material from Cameroon, and also with our study in Nigeria or our research in Nigeria, we also consult some of the libraries in Nigeria, mostly the University of Calabar, to get some information concerning the Biafra cases. Then we also use a qualitative approach of data analysis, which we use statistics to analyze some of the activities in the crisis. However, participant observation actually was highly used in the case of Ambazonia, because we are found in the southwest region, which the crisis actually is occurring, meaning that the researcher is part and parcel of the crisis. I've observed it, I've lived it. So most of the aspect the researcher is analyzing today is his own personal view, personal analysis, observation. He has observed it and he has been part of it. So we use this method of participant observation. Then we move straight away to look at the conceptual analysis and conceptual clarification of secessionist movement. We are saying that secession involves assertion of a claim of self-determination by an ethno-linguistic group or an ethnically heterogeneous region. Secessionist movement aim to dismember an independent state by either forcefully or non-forceful means into two or more independent states with legal personalities that are acknowledged in the international community. More importantly, secession is much more an act of separation than a demand for self-determination that does not alter the boundaries of a particular state. So here we try to also distinguish between the issue of secession and the issue of self-determination, whereas self-determination is carried out by certain protagonists in a state to gain their independence. Secessionists will also mean that some people in a particular state who are not happy with the governance, who are not happy with activities in that state, who want to separate, but they are within a particular boundary of the state. So these two issues should not be misunderstood, self-determination and the secession. So according to Lenin, he advanced arguments for and against secessionism under the rubrics of liberal political theory and communication. Lenin distinguished between two branches of liberal perspectives. First, he gives justification for secession. And secondly, he talks of issues against secession. With the justification for secession, Lenin proceeds that based on universal moral rights of freedom and association, groups have the right to secede, which means in a particular countries, groups have rights to secede if the groups face inequalities, if these groups are discriminated upon, if these groups are not adhered to their cultures, are not being respected, they have the moral right to secede, because it is enshrined in the Declaration of Human Rights that there is freedom of association and groups have that right to secede. Then he also gives some justification against secession, whereby he says, if groups actually perceive that their laws are not respected or their culture are not respected, if they are being marginalized, if they are not given if they are not well treated economically, these groups can as well go in for dialogue with the states instead of seceding, which means they can ask for a form of decentralization, regional autonomy, or federation or federation instead of either secession. This is said because even in the African, the OAU, a clause of 1964, it was actually discussed that or enshrined that states which had their independence should not be violated. If there's any issue between states, there shouldn't be secession. Instead, there should be some sort of a compromise. So all states which had independence in 1960 or from 1960 onward, states which are central independence, following that clause, there should be less talk of secession. Instead, there should be some sort of a dialogue between those who are not happy with the way they are being ruled or those who have problems. So he believed that the issue of secession can also be a rule if the rebel groups, if the opposition parties, or if those who are not happy, who are marginalized, can come into a compromise for them to actually go into dialogue, to look for a form of decentralization within a particular state, look for a form of regional autonomy or federation within that state instead of seceding. Collier and Hoffler argue that secessionist movements are more likely in countries where abundant natural resources are found. So with this, he believes that in countries where we have abundant natural resources, they are likely to be a lot of secessionist movement because areas which feel they are marginalized, but they are prone to natural resources such as oil, timber, and the rest, they believe that they can easily secede because with this, they can use it to actually form a state. So he believes that natural resources and issues of abundant world in most countries have actually influenced the issue of secession. And this, we can justify this with the issue of Nigeria, issue of Nigeria, the numerous abundant oil that was discovered there. Then also with the issue of Katanga in Congo, where you have a lot of minerals in Congo, they also have secession. So you can justify this claim by what he said. And then we realize that when states or part of countries, they have abundant mineral resources, they are prone to secession. Then he also talked of secessionists, if they must succeed, must be able to control the territory and be able to exploit the natural resources of the region. Now, the problem of these secessionists has been that when they believe that they have abundant natural resources, they go in for secession, but without having enough means to control the resources. And within a territorial boundary is bound to fail because if the resources are there and they don't have means to control it, it will be difficult for them to succeed. Another writer, Horace, presents empirical evidence that the largest number of secessionist movements emerge amongst underdeveloped groups in some countries. For example, he talked of South Sudan and Northern Chad. These groups, because they are underdeveloped and found in backward countries, they face a lot of difficulties. But on the other hand, he persists that underdeveloped sections in certain countries which are found in developed areas, found it very easier to stay within the group because they can migrate from the underdeveloped areas to a more lucrative areas where they could succeed. But in areas where you have underdeveloped groups in an underdeveloped country, it becomes difficult for them. And the only means for them is to secede because they don't have any means to survive in the state which is also as poor. So Horace actually gave this as one of the measures. All through the concepts and the views of these writers on the issue of secession is just to clarify their views on the secessionist tendencies in Africa. And we are saying that if you look at this view, you realize that most of the views can be linked to the DRC Congo, can be linked to the Katanga region in DRC Congo, can be linked to Eritrea, Ethiopia, can be linked to South Sudan under Sudan, can be linked to Biafra under Nigeria, and also can be linked to the Southwest and Northwest region under Cameroon. So these views actually, you can corroborate them and link them to all these major secessionist movements, which are part and parcel of it. So that conceptual clarification give us a clearer understanding of secessionist movement in sub-Saharan Africa. We will now look at the causes and evolution of the Biafran secessionist movement. There are several and many of them in Biafra.
Sorry, I will encourage you to speed up a bit. You have about 5 more minutes.
Hey, okay, thank you, Chair. Well, with the causes and evolution of Biafran secession movement, we'll look at the issue of regional animosity. And regional animosity, we'll look at the issue of Nigeria, in which Nigeria was divided into 3 regions. And with the 3 regions, the Igbos, whom at that time were actually lucrative. They had a lot of intelligentsia, and the fact that most of the two other areas on the west and the east has suspected the Igbo group of actually struggling to cling into power and to dominate the other group, that actually led to the issue of conflicts between the three groups. We talk of corruption, that one major issue was that most of the leaders at the time were highly corrupt. And then we also look at the issue of economic resources that Biafra actually had to secede, because at one moment they believed that they had oil, and with oil they could cope. And the issue of regionalism, which gave them that power to control about a certain percentage of the oil, they thought that with that, they could cope with that movement. Then we look at the issue of military takeover, which actually was like the turning point of the crisis, which began in 1965, when there was a legislative election in the Midwest, that's in the Yoruba area, and that election was rigged. And when the election was rigged, the central government actually supported Midwest. So this led to a lot of cacophony and chaos in the entire Nigeria. And with this, the Igbo, which were actually stigmatized at the time, and at the time, they were looked upon as people who actually dominated the economic section, and they had a lot of intelligentsia. So they were actually targeted. Because of this, Ojukwu Emeka, who was a governor of the Eastern region, decided to form a council, a revolutionary council, and with this council, they thought that Biafra, because of the resources, they could stand on their own, and this made him to declare the state of Biafra. That was 1967. The state of Biafra was declared, but the Nigerian government could not accept the state of Biafra to survive under it. And with this, the leader at the time, which was Gawan, yeah, I think it was, yes. No, Gawan, yes, who actually decided to ask African states not to support Biafran secessionists. And with this, he made a declaration that the issue of Biafra was an internal affair. Because being an internal affair, other countries should not involve. And again, he brought out the issue of the OAU clause in 1964, which stated that all African countries which had independence should not break off. Instead, they should struggle to be united and forge ahead. So that clause was used by so many African governments to prevent secessionists in their countries. Then with this, we look at the role that Cameroon government played in supporting the Nigerian government. President Amadu Ahijo, who also opposed secessionism at the time, supported the Nigerian government by giving a blockade in the Eastern region, making sure that most of the weapons were not received by the Biafran government, and making sure that Cameroonians themselves could not support them. So the only support that the government gave to Nigeria was that if we see some of the refugees, but all through President Amadu Ahijo played a very important role in putting a blockade in the Eastern region for weapons not to enter the Biafrans. And also in the OAU committee, President Amadu Ahijo played a great role to convince some of the leaders to support the Nigerian government. So with this, actually the Biafrans could not succeed, because at one moment they were almost left alone. But however, there were some states that supported Biafra, like France, Tanzania, Ivory Coast, Gabon, and Zambia. This country now started supported Biafra, but by 1967, the war weighed a lot on the side of the Biafrans. And Colonel Ojukwu Emeka, who was the head of the Biafran secessionist movement, escaped to Ivory Coast. And that ended the Biafran secessionist movement. With the issue of Ambazonia, I think we look at the issue of marginalization, which actually occurred in the area. So with this, we had the Southern Cameroons, and please, hold on, please. We had the issue of Southern Cameroons. The issue of Ambazonia came into effect in the sense that in 1961, we had two federated states that came into being, the West Cameroon and the East Cameroon. But most of the clauses that actually was put into place by the two governments was not respected by the central government. That's the government of President Amadu Ahijo did not respect this clause. So that had a weighting effect on the West Cameroon. Because of this, they cried of marginalization. Marginalization in the sense that the Fuman Conference that came up with the federal system that binded the two states was not respected. First, it was supposed to be a federation from 1961, but in 1972, the federation was abrogated to a unitary state. And in 1984, the Unity State also abrogated to form a republic. So with this, the Ambazonians were not happy with this situation. So they cried for marginalization. But the turning point actually came in 2016, in which the teachers had a strike and the lawyers also had a strike, or they presented their grievances to the government of Cameroon. The first of these grievances
your time is up now. So please just round up in some 30 seconds.
In rounding up, I would say the secessionist movement have certain successes and failures. One of the successes of this movement was that they were highly supported, both Biafra and Ambazonia. They were highly supported from the beginning. First, we talk of support from the diaspora and also support from some other countries. But they had several difficulties that led to the failure of this movement. Both movements actually were not recognized internationally. We're saying that a council like a organization like the United Nations, the OAU, and the rest did not recognize this movement. Secondly, the government forces had an upper hand over the rebel group, which were not well prepared. And thirdly, also there were roles played by the two countries. We had the major roles that was played by the Cameroonian government to support the Biafran group. And we had also another major role that was played by the government of Nigeria to actually support the government of Cameroon. So we realized that the two governments actually assisted each other. So in conclusion, we'll say that because of time constraint, the OAU clause from 1964 that actually talked of the respect of colonial boundaries inherited by from the colonial masters that should be respected, played a great role in puncturing most of the secessionist movement. Secondly, we say the secessionist movement, they were not well prepared, like the case of Ambazonia. They were not prepared. They just came in sporadically, were not prepared. But we call for the issue of a dialogue, that in cases of problems between countries, there should be dialogue between the state government and the secessionist movement. These dialogues will come in the sense that they should go in the issue of decentralization, federation, instead of outright secession. I think with the situation of Cameroon, that is what is being done today in Cameroon. The aspect of decentralization and which is going on and solving part of the problem. But that notwithstanding, in Cameroon, the crisis is still ongoing. So, Chair,
thank you.
Sorry for taking time.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we go to the questions and answer session. I see that Temitope is already responding to some questions and comments in the Q&A session. So before I ask if there are questions you like to ask each other, I have a few questions and comments for both of you. So starting with Tope, okay. I wrote down here a very interesting title. I find the title fascinating, and I enjoyed listening to her talk. Because she spoke with clarity, but I felt that your focus on telling us about Boko Haram and all the other atrocities that Boko Haram has committed took away too much of your time, to the point that you couldn't focus on you didn't have sufficient time to discuss the core part of your paper, which is activism abroad. So I would have loved to hear much about the diaspora movement that coordinated with the Bring Back Our Girls movement here in Nigeria. As you briefly mentioned the wife of the former US president, and but I would have loved to hear more about how the Bring Back Our Girls movement became an international thing, what factors propelled it, what level of success would you think it attained? You described the Bring Back Our Girls movement as still being vibrant after 8 years, and I'm wondering, can we really say that the Bring Back Our Girls movement is still at the forefront of advocacy here in Nigeria today? And I would also like to ask if you agree with some views that they bring back our girls' movement, especially the internationalization of that struggle, had some imperialist undertone, to the extent that it was so detached from the realities of the struggle against Boko Haram here in Nigeria. So those are my questions for Tokwe. So while she's preparing to respond, Primus, yeah, I enjoyed your presentation too. I actually looked forward to the listed titles here talking about Ambazonia Republic, because I myself, in 2018, I happened to travel to Cameroon by road through Ekok, Bamenda, and I saw firsthand what is happening in southern Cameroon. I passed through many checkpoints being manned by the Cameroonian gendarmes and those being manned by the Ambazonian rebels. I saw so many villages deserted. And ASU as a union has also been working with some of these organizations. I've had a few meetings with these people. So I was excited to see this. So you said that most secession efforts in Africa have failed. Yeah, and I agree with that. So I would like to ask you, aside from the lack of preparation and the non-recognition by the AU, would you think that there are roles being played by the international community in trying to cement what we would describe as the colonial borders, such that they do not want those borders to be further fragmented in spite of conflicts arising within them? Secondly, you said that Biafra failed, but that the Ambazonian resistance is still ongoing. And so I would like to ask that you clarify a little bit more, because if we say that, yeah, the war for Biafra secession, 1967 to 1970 failed, yeah, we will be correct. But Biafra as an idea, to what extent can we say it has failed in the face of what is going on in Southeast Nigeria today? We know of MASOB in the early 2000s, which has now led us into the era of IPOB under the leadership of Nnamdi Kanu. And we all know what that has resulted to at the moment. Now, you also tried to differentiate between secession and self-determination. Well, to an extent, I agree with what, to how you have made those definitions, but I would want to think that secession is a form of self-determination, a more radical form of self-determination, and not necessarily different from self-determination. You said something about one of the challenges being faced by areas trying to secede is that, yes, they have resources under their territories, but they lack the means to control such resources. I would like you to dwell more on that. What exactly do you understand by being able to control resources under one's region? And then, yeah, because you look at Niger Delta militants here in Nigeria who are into oil bunkering almost unrestricted. DR Congo that you also cited as example, we know what goes on with illegal mining of natural resources in that region. So I'm trying to understand what you mean by the inability of this rebel or secessionist movement to control resources in the region. So I'll stop there for now and allow Temitope to respond. After that, we'll take responses from Primus and then see if we have other questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deolu. And I will quickly and briefly talk about your point, because I think the noise is actually coming from behind me, and there is nothing I can do about it. I'm going to meet them, and I think they're doing something. So you talked about the Bring Back Our Girls not really valid up until now. Yes, I understand your point that because there has been a lot of recent national security issues that sprang up, the Bring Back Our Girls is not really an issue as of today. But I can categorically tell you that although it wasn't as before, where everybody was clamoring for the Bring Back Our Girls hashtag and all of that, but we still have people that are still not forgetting about these movements. There are people that are actively still involved in this movement. People that are still not, they are counting days, and okay, like in the news over the week, we heard about 2 Chibok girls were rescued or something. I think I saw that over the news. I don't know if you were aware of that. So
Yes.
fine. Okay, so fine. The Bring Back Our Girls movement might not be as it used to be before because of a lot of security issues that are coming up recently. Then you also talked about, I don't know what your other question, sorry, I forgot about the other question. Well, okay, you were talking about my paper was not really talking about the activism abroad. Well, the paper is actually going to be talking more on activism abroad, but this presentation is just a point that I try to pick out of the whole of the paper to talk briefly about what the paper is all about and every other thing. So, thank you for the point and your observation. I appreciate.
Thank you. Yeah. Primus, please. Yeah. Primus, you can unmute and then respond.
Okay. Chair, I was just saying that I was very impressed by the various questions you've asked. And this has gone a long way actually to make me understand that you actually follow the presentation. So the first question, we talk of rules. The issue is that with internationalization, the role that they play was that I talk of the clause of the OAU that was in 1964. This clause actually made it possible that even the United Nations at times with the role of the OAU in the crisis that played in the crisis was that the OAU supported the Nigerian government wholeheartedly, and the UN was also on its part. You also realize that today, even with the Amazonian crisis, the African Union has gone mute, and we believe that it's gone mute because of that same clause that was enshrined in the OAU Charter in 1964. So actually, we can say that on the whole, international organizations, the role that they have played, like the United Nations, is mostly to assist refugees in the area. But in supporting the movement, they have not supported it. But they have sent the organization like the World Health Organization, the Refugee Council into Amazonian land to assist them. This same thing was done during the Biafran War. So they did not actually support the movement, but assisted in terms of taking care of the refugees and humanitarian actions. That's what the international organization did to the two movements. Then you talk of the issue of the Biafran. Yes, I will see with you. I buy with you that Biafran's issue has come up again. I don't know, because the people probably they were not satisfied. But I'm saying that in 1960 or 1970, this issue of the Biafran war came to an end. But today it has resurfaced, so it's ongoing. Then you talk of the issue of secession and self-determination. Yeah, the distinction I made here was that the issue of self-determination is that with self-determination, you see a particular group of people who are struggling to achieve independence. Some of these people might be their borders are not well recognized. By the period they have independence, they can demarcate it. But with secession, most of these groups are within the territorial boundary of a particular state, and they want to secede from it and create their own state. But whereas self-determination, some countries, they achieve independence and they can modify their states or territory. So that's the two differences I was trying to make with the issue of secession and self-determination. Then with secession not having means to control resources, You realize that here with the situation of Biafra, yes, actually at the time, Ojukwu was the governor of the Eastern region, and he made provision of having not giving some of the word to the percentage of the word to the federal government, and that's what actually instigated the crisis. But in most secessionist areas where the rebels have captured certain areas, they can control the world. But with the situation of Ambazonia, they did not capture any area. They just belong to an area in which there is well. They believe that if they are proclaimed, if they succeed in the secessionist movement, they will control that world. So we are saying that in most countries where the secessionists don't have control over the world, it's difficult for them to succeed. The case of Somalia, of Eritrea, they succeeded because where they were, they had control over the world. They have a self-government that they were controlled, a self-proclaimed autonomy that they had. That's why Eritrea actually succeeded. But in areas even like Katanga, the citizens, the indigents there never had control over the world. So it fall back up on them. So we are saying that where the secessionists have control over world, if they use it rightly, they can forge up and become independent or achieve their goals. But where they don't have control over the world, still only believing that they will defeat the government in place before they start controlling the world, it becomes problematic. This actually goes to Ambazonia, because in Ambazonia, they don't have control over the world, but they believe that if they take over the government, they will start controlling the world. That's why I'm saying that in areas where these people don't have control over the world, it is absolutely difficult for them to forge ahead with their goals. But areas where they have control, they can use it, but you always know that the government has more influence on autonomy over these issues. And the government forces are more powerful at times than even the rebels and the civil movement, mostly if they don't prepare themselves. So I believe that having control of a particular area where there is wealth, it will be a booster to the civil movement than thinking that they will occupy the government before they start controlling the world. This goes with the situation of Amazonia. So for the moment, I will stop it for the moment, and I want to thank you, Chair, for the comments you've made, the work. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So I'm going to ask if you both have questions for each other. I just want us to have a little conversation about what intersection, areas of convergence and possible divergence can we find between what we define as terrorism and agitation for for autonomy and self-determination or secession within the context of a country like Nigeria. So we have the Biafrans who want to have a separate state on one hand, and Tokpe earlier has talked about Boko Haram that wants to have an Islamic state, whether by Islamizing the entirety of Nigeria or carving out an entity for itself somewhere in the north. So what are the connections between all these? What implications can we draw in terms of the legitimacy and the viability of Nigeria as a post-colonial state? And I want to assume that whatever it is that we are saying here applies in many ways to countries like Cameroon and DRC, where we have other forms of agitation. So I would like to listen to the two of you and see whether there are points of intersections between these two discourses that we are having. So Tope can go first in about 2-3 minutes, then we have Primus again before we round up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deolu. My paper addresses insecurity in Nigeria and what the international community are doing about this abroad. I want to make us to understand that the international community, they are not just about developing the economy aspect of the nation. They also have their parts they play in security at home, and also there have been growing dissatisfaction and perceived injustice that has brought about fueled secession agitation, especially in uh, what's it called? Um, the eastern part of the country. So I think that one of the things that we should try to understand is that although the government may not really want, may not, or I don't want to say they are not, they may not be actually doing something about it because of probably their political gain or their own ideology about all of this. So I think that one way we can help to um, bring about change is that we should ensure that even those that are not within the vicinity of this area are made to understand their quota to the development of the country, even while they are not in the country. So I think that's what I can actually contribute. I don't know if my answer to this your question is what you're actually looking for.
Thank you. Thank you. Primus?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think with what you just said, I believe that the point of convergence is that in most of these countries, be it Nigeria, be it DRC, Congo, South Sudan, and the rest, we have faced a problem of poor governance. The problem of poor governance in which we have the resources being controlled by a particular tribe or particular ethnic groups, and other groups are being marginalized. So this issue of poor governance, and also the issue of inequitable distribution of wealth. Countries, areas where you have these resources, like we talk in terms of oil, natural resources, they believe that because they have these natural resources, their areas have to be developed. We realize that in most of these areas where you have secession movement and self-determination, these areas have world, but they were not being developed. And most of the world went to the national body, and probably other areas were more developed than these people who had this world. So in all these cases, it brought a lot of problem. Then we want to believe that with the issue of the Boko Haram is a cultural issue. With this cultural issue, also people's culture has to be respected. If the Boko Haram want to create a state, they have to actually come to a compromise with the government. They sit and they give certain measures, and the issue of imposing their laws to other tribes is not the best. I think with Cameroon it's the same situation, because the culture of the people, their linguistic culture, was not being adhered to by the French government. The French government believed that they had to impose French on every area in southern Cameroon. That's why they rejected it. Same with Nigeria. We believe that with the Sharia law, I think it would have been accepted to take part only in most of the northern areas, not in the entire country or in some of the areas that they control. And it should have been a dialogue between the various states. Then, to the other points, we are saying that most of this secession movement, at times, when they want to take over or want to carry out the activities, they believe that the international body will come to their aid. Here, some of them, they should know that the international, in the world, they talk of no permanent enemies. It is a world of interest. Even the international bodies, they have their interest in this crisis. So in case of some of these crises, they come in to support the regime or support the rebel movement, knowing what they will benefit from it. Like the situation in Cameroon, most of the secessionists, they believe that when they will start their movement, they will be supported by the international body. But at the end of the day, they realize that they gain no support from the international body. So secessionist movement, before they come into it, should be something that they prepare it. They have a well-defined constitution and have reasons for their movement, and not to rely more on the international body, because the international body come in when they see their interests being felt. So we believe that in all this secessionist movement, most of these countries had, or the rebel leaders, they believed that they were to be supported by the international body, but they never had this support. So I think if secessionists had to carry out their activities, they should think twice and know where they are going to, because at certain moments, if the governments are in good terms with the international community, they will all support this government. to the detriment of the secessionists. Okay, I think I might come later to intervene. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you. So do we have any comments from the audience, questions from the Q&A?
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask the first presenter, even though I came in when he had gone so far, my preoccupation was for the issue of the Chibok girls. What is the situation of the Chibok girls? Have all of them been released, or they are still in captivity? I think I would just want to have an idea of that.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Primus. Well, according to research, all of them have not been released. Some are still in captives, and that's what we've been hearing. As at 2 or 3 days ago, we had in the news about 2 of them have been released. In fact, I saw it in one of the dailies. So what we have been hearing so far is some are still in captivity, some have been released. Some that have been released have been probably the government organizations sent them abroad to school. Some are giving birth, some have died. We're hearing a lot of things. So we believe that a lot of them have not been released because they are about 270 something. So if we hear news about one of them released, it's that we are hearing figures like 2, 3, 1, so something like that. If we are removing 2, 3, 1 from 270 something, so I want to believe that a lot are still in captivity. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. So, in the absence of any other question, I suspect we are going to come to an early adjournment of our proceedings. I want to thank our 2 presenters today for taking out time to join us at LSA 2022. And I do hope that in 2023...
Hello, sir. I think there is a question. Somebody is asking a question to Mr. Primus.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Mr. Primus, somebody is asking here that an attack by the Amazonian resistance forces happened in Taraba State recently, which is Nigeria, and so the person who is asking the question, we want you to comment on that because that would be a transnational attack. I mean, a cross-border incursion into, yeah. So,
actually, it has been rumored that most of the weapons of most of the Amazonians pass through Nigeria to Cameroon. So we cannot doubt that sort of attack can be carried out because, first of all, there have been so many meetings held between Cameroon and Nigeria to puncture the movement of the Amazonian movement. Because, with the Biafran War, Cameroon government played a vital role in blockading weapons from entering Biafra. It's same thing with the Nigerian government. You realize that in 2017, at the heat of the crisis, the leader of the Amazonian government, interim government, Seseku Ayuk Tabe, and about close to 39 others were arrested in Nigeria and deported to Cameroon. So the 2 governments, Cameroon and Nigeria, they are working hand in hand to prevent any attacks from the 2 countries. So such an attack could be further because most of the weapons pass through either in the northern part of Nigeria or the southern part of Nigeria and entering Cameroon. But we should know that Cameroon and Nigeria government, they have a lot of key issues concerning their border, which means they have signed so many degrees in protecting the borders and preventing this transnational movement. I think that's all I can say.
All right. Thank you. Wow. Okay, that's an interesting response. Yeah, I will I will think that the default mode in the region is that of a regime, that of state protection, and then regime survival, which makes it understandable why the Nigerian government did what it did. It was considered as unfortunate by many human rights organizations because it did set back the Ambazonian movement for freedom. I think that one takeaway that we can underline from the exchanges here so far is that many of post-colonial African states still struggle to have a firm grasp on the issue of basic governance, and this inability to address the issues of basic governance and how to also build institutions that are inclusive, manage the institutions that are capable of helping in managing diversity, and then ensuring the equitable distribution of resources have continued to fuel these agitations coming decades after independence from colonial powers. So there are attempts by many of these nations cobbled together and created artificially by colonial powers to reassert themselves and redraw the colonial maps that the imperialists handed over. It is our hope that Africa will know peace, that it will know justice, and also know progress. But for all these issues, I want to believe that scholars will continue to have reasons to engage them, and a platform like the LSA remains a very, prominent platform upon which our ideas and opinions on the trajectory of development in Africa can continue to be discussed and examined. So on this note, I want to thank the two of you. I want to thank our support team from the LSA for making it possible for us to have this session. In spite of the fact that two of our presenters didn't show up, it's been quite interesting. I look forward to seeing you all at LSA in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We are looking forward to get the information on the presentation of papers, by the guidelines. We've not had them. So
thank you, Mr. Dio.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay, so you can send a mail, Mr. Primo, send a mail to the organizers. I believe they will have a response for you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot for your input.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, bye.